Welcome everyone to the Esports World Cup 2026. We have Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura, one of the favorites in this tournament, taking on Denis Lazavik, a young talent who's rising up very quickly. Denis is white in game 1. He opens with pawn to d4. Hikaru goes knight f6, knight f3, d5. Don't let the alignment on the screen fool you. Hikaru is black, Denis is white. Knight d7 played here by Hikaru, and it does feel like Hikaru is playing this opening a bit too passively because his bishop here on c8 is blocked. Meanwhile, Denis has his bishop outside the pawn chain here on g5. But on the other hand, Hikaru says, well, I'm just simply going to put my bishop here, bring my knight to e4, and it looks completely fine for me. He can castle here. That seems like a fine move, but also knight e4, jumping in, offering a trade of bishops, and Denis comes back, bishop f4. Now Hikaru can push his pawn to f5. He can also castle here. He castles as black. White castles, bishop comes to d6, and after bishop takes bishop, you can take back with the pawn even, to just cement the e5 square. So rook e1 played, rook e8, he takes, and Hikaru does take back with the pawn. 8 minutes 25 seconds for Hikaru, 8 minutes for Denis. Denis wants to start poking the black queen side, so a6 so that a5 can be met with b5. Rook comes to c1, and now Hikaru has to decide what his next strategy is going to be. He pushes his pawn to e5 right into the center, and now threats can be simply to take here or here and push even e4. So Denis has to tread very carefully here, and I think he's taking his time, rightly so. Hikaru is looking very confident. He's shaking his head. He goes back, bishop b1, knight goes back to f6, and h3. The rook comes to c8, and now queen d1 played. Denis is playing a bit passively. Hikaru definitely on the front foot. He can push his pawn to e4, and he does that. Knight goes back to h2, and b5 takes. Queen comes to e2, putting pressure on the b5 pawn, and now b4 could be an idea, but queen b6 and b4 also possible. He goes bishop c6, f3, knight comes to b6, trying to get to the c4 square, and b3 stopping the knight from jumping in. Pawn takes pawn, and black structure is a bit loose, but also the e3 pawn is a bit weak. So knight f3, knight jumps to e4, takes, pawn takes, knight goes back to h2, and d5. So black has a lot of space, and now b4. It does seem like white wants to go knight b3, knight c5, but it doesn't really look good because black can also jump knight c4. He already has space. Rook can swing over. Let's see, knight b3, rook g6, knight comes to c5. Hikaru has 3 minutes 45 seconds. Denis has 4 minutes 15 seconds. Knight c4 played. Hikaru is clearly better here. He goes knight to g4, and he wants to bring his knight to e5. Queen comes to g5. Pressure on the e3 pawn. h5 coming in next. Denis Lazavik goes knight e5. He gives up a pawn, perhaps takes, but in return is left with a good knight against not so good bishop. Knight b3, knight d4 seems like the right plan to put the knight in the heart of the position. Rook f1, h6 played by Hikaru, and now queen d2. Yeah, the rook comes to d8. The other rook goes to a1, entering in here. The bishop drops back, attacking the h3 pawn, and king h1 played. Maybe get rook g3 in. Goes queen h5. Whoa, the position is heating up now. Hikaru ready to sacrifice something on h3, I believe. Plays knight d7, rook d7 taken, and check, king h7, and rook to f8. But that's a mistake because now black is better. But rook a6 wasn't the best. He should have played rook g3, trying to put pressure here. But rook a6 played, and Denis is back in the game if he finds rook to b8, attacking b5 pawn. Rook b8 attack here, not so easy to find it. Goes queen e1, and Hikaru now jumps in with rook a2, queen g3, trying to get the queen in. But look at the times now. 58 seconds for Denis and 2 minutes for Hikaru. Hikaru is completely winning now. Queen g6, good move. Takes, king takes. Goes rook e1, and now rook c2, attacking the c3 pawn. Rook c8, maybe rook c7 was better. Rook here, check, f6, attacks here, and the rook already enters in. The rooks are doubled on the 7th rank. And while white can win the d5 pawn, first defense, rook e2, losing the e3 pawn, but takes, rook takes c3, rook b7, and now it's completely better, but should have played f5 and then won this pawn, and he would have won the game, but instead plays e3. And now the problem is that you will get back your pawn, but it will be 2 versus 3, and this endgame is actually holdable for white. So Denis Lazavik has managed to hold this, but look at the time, 1 minute 8 seconds for Hikaru, 22 seconds for Denis Lazavik. So this is not going to be easy to hold Hikaru to a draw here on time. And that's also part of the EWC, that you are actually, you have to be playing on the clock, otherwise you could lose on time. By the way, he loses the h pawn, and now Hikaru very close to a draw here. He needs to find something to keep going. Oh, he loses the pawn as well. He loses the pawn, and now both the players just playing with the rook. Many times Hikaru was placing the rook, but Denis pre-moving. He has only 6 seconds. He needs to move quickly. And right now, check, and he loses the rook. Oh my god, he lost the rook. And look at Hikaru. What am I doing? He says, I'm not playing well. Not playing well. He was unhappy with himself because he was completely winning in that endgame, but brought it here, but then converted in the rook endgame. That was amazing. Just rook and king versus rook and king. Hikaru Nakamura is amazing when it comes to these time scrambles, and they call it the dirty flagging in online chess. Well, here the game was drawn, but he managed to flag. But there he is shaking his head. He's like, what did I do? Gives a thumbs up to the volunteers there that he's ready for the second game. We are set, and now Denis Lazavik needs to win. Okay, let's go. Hikaru has the white pieces. Still shaking his head there. Now plays e4, c6, the Karo Khan. d4, d5, exchange. Bishop d3, knight c6, c3. And we have knight to f6. Bishop comes to f4. g6, knight to f3. And Denis offers a trade of bishops. Do you want to take it? Hikaru simply castles. e6 played here. h3, and bishop comes to d6. Well, all that Hikaru needs is a draw, so he's not going to try too hard here with the white pieces. Rook e1, h5. But Denis needs to win, and I think he's trying to imbalance the play as much as he can. a6, stopping the knight from jumping into b5. Knight comes back. King f8. He wants to put his king to g7. Knight e3, attacking the bishop. King g7, and now if you take knight f5, I'll take back anyway with my g pawn or even the e pawn this time to put my knight to e4. Knight e5, queen goes back, knight goes back to f3. By the way, remember, if you would have taken here, here and here, bishop at there's knight f5, and then you lose the queen. So queen c7, knight f3, b5, a4, b4, and now already white is slightly better placed, c4, but instead could take here, here and here, because if you take here, I have bishop f5 and an incredible tactic, gf5, queen d2, attacking b4 and g5. Wow, beautiful. Anyway, this did not happen. He played c4, takes, bishop f5, ef, knight c4, rook d8. The knight jumps in, takes. White now plays his rook to c1, attacking the queen, queen d6, coming in, and queen to b3. Now notice that the d4 pawn is a bit loose, and also the rook on e5. So he plays rook c8, offering a trade. The rook comes to e1, not wanting to trade. Denis goes rook d8, and now after h4 he plays his rook to c7, just guarding it. He has pressure on the position. g3 by Hikaru, making space for the king to come to g2, doubling on the c file. Now rook c4 is a threat. Rook e2, and puts the rook on c4. King g2 played, and there's already some tactics now. You can actually pick up the pawn on d4, takes, knight takes, and queen e5, and d4 is hanging. So that could be something here for Denis to try, and he takes, knight takes, queen e5, and Hikaru takes the pawn on b4. We have queen to d5, knight jumps back, and rook c4 played. Queen goes back to b3, knight c5, and queen e3. He wins another pawn on a4. Rook d2, attacking the queen and offering a queen trade. He plays b3. Ooh, forking the two pieces. Rook c3 played. That's a very nice move by Denis. Hikaru shaking his head that he missed that. Knight g5, he finds it so that the knight is hanging, and now e4 is hanging. So if he played knight c5, there was b4 followed by knight e4. So he goes e3, fe, knight b6, rook a2. But it feels like all the pieces are getting traded now. Takes here and knight c4. So actually black is the one who seems to be pressing a bit here. King g1, knight goes back to e5 and attacks f7, but now there's no attack because the knight defends it very well. The players are now making moves quickly. Denis has to win, but how do you beat Hikaru from such a position? It's almost impossible. Rook b2, goes king f1. In fact, he can keep checking Hikaru here. Rook b1, rook b2, and so on. But he plays with the king, check, king g7, again puts the rook on a7. And this time Hikaru decides to check, and a draw is agreed. Hikaru Nakamura goes through to the top 8. What a match this was against Denis Lazavik. He was almost in big trouble here in the first game because that game was drawn, and in this one he was slightly worse, but in the end he managed to win game 1, draw here, and will now reach the top 8, where we will have maybe a match very soon. We can see Magnus versus Hikaru loading here, and kudos to Hikaru. Denis Lazavik, well, he's not out of the tournament. He's a great player, and he'll get one more chance in this event to fight against the big guys.
I'm pretty happy with the way that I won the first game. I'm not happy because I completely outplayed him and was winning on the board. And then at some moment I tried to simplify, and he had a little bit more time than I thought he did. And of course, at the end it should have been a draw, but you know, time is part of the game, unfortunately. So that was good. Second game wasn't the best, but I defended pretty well when I needed to, so it's good.
You've now qualified to the playoffs. How would you evaluate your overall play going into the next stage of the tournament?
I think I played better match by match. The first match wasn't great. This match was better, other than when I completely messed up the winning position. But I feel pretty good. So, you know, we keep moving forward, and hopefully I'll just keep getting better.
You're of course representing Team Falcons along with your teammate Alireza Firouzja. Is it helpful for you knowing that you have a second teammate in the competition that can score points for your club?
I mean, I haven't been paying close attention to Alireza's matches, but we're obviously both very good blitz players, and so I think the fact that there are 2 Falcons here gives us great chances. And much more importantly, Denis, I think, is representing AL AG, which is leading overall, so it's very good to at least make it more difficult for him to obtain points for them. So as far as the team goes, we're in very good shape.
Well, congratulations to you and best of luck in the rest of the tournament.
Thank you.